Finding Peace After Love at 50. A Woman's Journey Through Loss, Transformation, and Acceptance. My name is Evelyn Parker. I'm 51 years old. And I'm about to tell you a story that doesn't end the way you think it will. It's not a story about getting the man. It's not a story about riding off into the sunset and living happily ever after. It's something far more complicated, far more real, and ultimately far more valuable than that. This is a story about finding peace after experiencing the kind of love that wakes you up. This is about what happens after the intensity fades. This is about learning to live with the gift that love gives you, even when love itself isn't the answer. I'm going to take you on a journey that begins with loss, moves through transformation, and arrives somewhere unexpected. A place where peace feels not like an ending, but like a beginning. A place where I've learned that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones we have with ourselves. Let me start at the beginning, because you need to understand who I was before Marcus arrived. You need to understand the woman who had spent 30 years disappearing into the roles that life had assigned to her. That woman is essential to this story, because she's the woman who needed to be found. My name is Evelyn Parker, and I'm a woman from Portland, Oregon. When I turned 50 last March, something inside me broke open. Not in a gentle way. Not in a way that felt like healing. It felt like shattering. It felt like 30 years of accumulated grief and regret and unspoken dreams finally gave way under their own weight. I had married Richard Parker when I was just 23 years old. He was safe. He was appropriate. He came from a good family with traditional values. His parents, Thomas and Margaret Parker, were the kind of in-laws that other women envied. Thomas, now 78, was a wise and traditional man who valued family above all else. Margaret, 75, was nurturing and kind. They had raised Richard to be a good provider, a stable partner, a man who would build something lasting. And we did build something lasting. We had 5 children together. Michael, now 28, my eldest son. He was the responsible one, the calm one, the one who took on the weight of protecting his siblings even when he was just a child himself. Emily, 27, my eldest daughter. She was compassionate and creative, always the peacemaker, always trying to smooth over family conflicts. Daniel, 25, the adventurous one, the sometimes rebellious one who loved taking risks and pushing boundaries. Olivia, 23, independent and strong-willed, pursuing her passions with a fierceness that both thrilled and terrified me. And Joshua, my youngest at 22, thoughtful and intelligent, quiet and observant, the kind of son who watches everything before speaking. 5 different human beings. 5 distinct personalities. 5 souls who became the entire focus of my existence for nearly 3 decades. We lived in a nice house in a nice neighborhood in the suburbs. The kind of neighborhood where children played safely in yards, where neighbors knew each other's names, where everything looked perfect from the outside. And it was perfect. Or so I told myself. It was stable. It was secure. It was everything a woman was supposed to want. But somewhere in all of that perfection, I disappeared. I didn't disappear dramatically. There was no single moment where I said, I'm going to stop being myself now. It happened gradually, in small choices. In the mornings I chose to skip taking time for myself. In the evenings I chose to listen to everyone else's stories instead of sharing my own. In the conversations where I learned to make myself smaller so that everyone else could be bigger. In the years where I made myself indispensable to everyone but invisible to myself. By the time I turned 50, I had become a ghost in my own life. I was present but not real. I was there but somehow not there. I had mastered the art of disappearing so thoroughly that even I forgot I was supposed to be here. I had a job in nonprofit administration. It was meaningful work without being exceptional work. It paid the bills without requiring me to be exceptional. It was perfect for a woman who had trained herself to stay small, to not take up too much space, to accommodate everyone else's needs first. I had friendships with women I'd known for decades. They were my lifeline in many ways, the people who kept me tethered to something that felt like living. But I had also become something in those friendships that I didn't like to admit, even to myself. I had become the strong one. The reliable one. The one who never needed anything. The one who was always there to listen but never asked for support. The one who put everyone else's needs before her own. Nobody ever asked me how I was really doing. Because I had trained them not to. I had spent 30 years teaching the people around me that I didn't need anything, that I was fine, that my job was to take care of them. And they had learned that lesson very well. At home, the house was always clean. Always organized. Every room decorated with intention and care. I was good at creating the appearance of a life well lived. But when I closed the door in the evening and stood alone in my beautiful kitchen that I had decorated myself, the silence was deafening. The emptiness was overwhelming. And I felt absolutely nothing at all. That's the thing about disappearing for 30 years. Eventually, you don't just disappear from other people's awareness. You disappear from your own. You stop feeling. You stop wanting. You stop being. I tried to fix it, the way women like me always try to fix things. I saw a problem and I tried to solve it. I took action. I was productive. I joined a yoga class, thinking that maybe stretching and breathing could somehow restore the self I had lost. I bought self-help books with titles like Reclaim Your Life and The Second Act of You and Becoming, thinking that somewhere in those pages there might be instructions for how to become real again. I bought a beautiful leather journal and I wrote affirmations that felt like someone else's words. I scheduled coffee dates with friends and I smiled while they talked about their grandchildren and their retirement plans, and I performed happiness so convincingly that I almost believed it myself. But nothing worked. Because you can't fix yourself back to life. You have to actually wake up first. When I turned 50, something shifted. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't a lightning bolt moment. It was more like a door creaking open, slowly, inevitably, showing you a room you didn't know existed inside yourself. I remember that morning. Waking up and knowing that I had officially lived half a century. 50 years. That number broke something open inside me. Not all at once. But slowly, over the course of that day, something shattered. Something that all the yoga classes and self-help books and affirmations couldn't put back together. 3 months later, I was in a grocery store on a Tuesday evening. Nothing special about it. Just a regular Tuesday. Just a regular evening of my regular life. I was buying ingredients for dinner. I was moving through the produce section. And then a song came on the store speakers. I don't even remember which song. Something about being young and wild and free. And I just broke. Right there in front of the lettuce, in the middle of the produce section, surrounded by strangers buying their evening groceries, I started crying. Not pretty crying. Not the kind where you're discreetly wiping your eyes. But real crying. The kind where your whole body shakes and you don't care who sees you because something inside you has finally broken through all the walls you've spent 30 years building. A young man came up to me and asked if I was okay. He couldn't have been more than 25. And I laughed. Actually laughed through the tears. And I said to him, I'm 50 years old, and I'm not sure I've ever actually been okay. He looked confused and walked away. But those words stayed with me. They haunted me. Because they were true. I had never been okay. I had been compliant. I had been efficient. I had been reliable. I had been a good daughter, a good sister, a good wife, a good mother, a good friend, a good employee. But I had never been okay. I had never been me. That night, I went home and I did something I hadn't done since college. I locked myself in my bedroom. I cleared my schedule. I told my friends I wasn't available for the book club. I canceled coffee dates. And I closed my bedroom door and I got real with myself in a way I hadn't allowed myself to be in decades. I pulled out an old journal from 1998. 22 years earlier. And I read the words of a younger Evelyn. She was different. So different. She had dreams written out in careful handwriting. She wrote about wanting to travel to places she'd only read about. She wrote about wanting to write a novel. She wrote about wanting to fall in love with someone who made her feel alive, not someone who made her feel secure. She wrote about wanting to build a life that felt true to her, not true to what was expected of her. But by 2005, those journals stopped. She stopped writing. She stopped dreaming. She became practical. She became a wife. She became a mother. She became a woman whose entire life was about managing everyone else's expectations and accommodating everyone else's needs. I sat on my bedroom floor with those journals spread around me like evidence of a life unlived, and I wept. Not just for the girl I had been, but for all the versions of myself I had killed off in the name of being good, being reliable, being small enough not to threaten anyone, being invisible enough not to cause any trouble. But here's what happened after the grief settled. Something unexpected. Something I didn't anticipate. Clarity. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't some dramatic epiphany moment like you see in the movies. It was slow. It was gentle. It was a morning when I woke up and instead of checking my phone and immediately jumping into everyone else's needs, I sat on my back porch and listened to the birds. It was an evening when I decided to take a walk just because I wanted to, not because I should. It was a Sunday when I pulled out my old camera, a Canon that had been sitting in a closet for 15 years, and I started photographing things that interested me. Just for the joy of it. Small things. Quiet things. Things that nobody else would notice or care about. But they were the beginning of something. They were the beginning of me waking up. I started a ritual. Every evening around 5 o'clock, I would take a walk through my neighborhood. And I would really see it. Not just move through it like I had for 30 years without noticing. But actually see it. The way the light changed in autumn. The way the old Victorian houses held their stories and their architecture. The way strangers' lives were happening behind lit windows. The way the world was alive and beautiful and happening with or without my participation in it. One evening in October, I was on my walk, and I realized something. I was smiling. Not smiling because I should. Not smiling because someone was watching. But smiling because the sky was a particular shade of pink and I was alive to see it. And that smile was the most real thing I had felt in years. That's when everything started to change. Not in a lightning bolt way. But in a slow, inevitable way. The way a door opens when you finally stop pushing against it and realize it was never locked. The way light comes gradually into a room when you finally open the curtains. The way life comes back into a body that has been numb for so long. And then I met him. I met Marcus on an ordinary Tuesday. Not in a coffee shop. Not at a dinner party or through a dating app or anywhere that would make for a good story. Not anywhere romantic or serendipitous. I met him at the community center where I had volunteered to help with a nonprofit fundraiser. His name was Marcus. He was 52 years old. He had gray hair that he didn't try to hide. Lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent thinking deeply about things. Years spent noticing. Years spent paying attention to the world around him. I didn't think anything of it at first. We were just two volunteers in the same room. Marcus was on the board of the nonprofit. He worked in education. He was a principal at a local high school. He had been divorced for 8 years. He had a daughter in college. He lived alone in a house that faced a small park. We worked together on the fundraiser. By worked together, I mean we were in the same room coordinating with other volunteers. Our interaction was cordial. Professional. Forgettable. I remember thinking he was kind. I remember thinking he seemed sad in a way that he was trying to hide. I remember thinking he probably had a lot on his mind. I didn't think he had noticed me. I was just another middle-aged woman doing her volunteer work. But he had noticed me. Months later, he would tell me that he had watched me that entire evening. The way I moved through the room with intention. The way I talked to people. The way I listened. The way I picked up a dropped box without being asked. The way I smiled, and he noticed that my smile didn't reach my eyes, which meant I was still carrying something. Something heavy. Something I hadn't put down in a very long time. He told me, "You were so lost in your own thoughts that you seemed like the most present person in the room." That's what he said months later, when we were already falling. But at the time, I had no idea that he had seen me at all. For weeks after that fundraiser, we ran into each other occasionally. At a non-profit meeting. At the coffee shop near the community center. On the street. Each time, we would exchange pleasantries. "How are you?" "I'm well, how are you?" All very proper and distant. All very safe. And then one day, there was an incident that changed everything. I was at the coffee shop, and a teenager came in. He couldn't have been more than 16. He ordered something expensive. The barista told him the price, and I watched his face fall. He didn't have enough money. He was embarrassed. He was mortified. And my heart broke a little. I did what I always did. I stepped in. I offered to pay. The kid protested, but I insisted. It felt good to help. It felt like that's what I'm supposed to do. That's my role. That's who I am. The helper. The one who takes care of people. The one who makes sure everyone's needs are met. But then Marcus appeared. I didn't even know he was in the coffee shop. And he gently touched my arm and said something that changed how I understood everything. He said, "Why don't we let him keep his dignity?" And then he turned to the kid and said, "You know what? I was about to order something. How about you and I share a coffee? I could use some company while I grade papers." The kid hesitated. But something in Marcus's manner, the way he spoke, the way he asked without pity, made the kid say yes. I stood there watching them sit together. Watching Marcus ask the kid questions about his life. And I realized something that shifted something inside me. Marcus wasn't trying to save anyone. He was trying to see them. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. Later, when the kid left, Marcus came over to me. He didn't apologize. He didn't make me feel bad about what I'd done. He just said, "Not everyone needs to be fixed, Evelyn. Sometimes what people need is to be seen." And something in that simple observation reached me in a place I didn't know was open. We started talking after that. It wasn't intentional. We didn't sit down and plan to spend time together. But we kept running into each other. And each time, instead of a quick hello, we would stop. We would actually talk. At first about nothing. About the weather. About the nonprofit. About books we were reading. About the ordinary things that people talk about when they're getting to know each other. But then the conversations deepened. He asked me questions that no one had asked me in decades. "What did you want to be when you were younger?" he asked. "If you could do anything right now, with absolutely no restrictions, what would you do?" he asked. "What are you afraid of?" he asked. "What do you wish people knew about you?" he asked. These weren't small talk questions. These were the kind of questions you ask someone you actually want to know. Someone you genuinely care about understanding. Someone you see as a complete human being with thoughts and dreams and a life that matters. And I started to answer them. Tentatively at first. Like I was testing the water. Like I was afraid the ground would give way if I told the truth. But he just listened. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't offer solutions or advice. He just listened like what I was saying mattered. Like I mattered. By November, we were meeting intentionally. Coffee on Tuesday mornings. Walks on Friday evenings. Dinner once a week. And I was terrified. Not because of him. But because of what was happening inside me. I was coming alive. Not slowly and gradually. But in these startling, sudden moments where I would realize I was laughing genuinely. Or I was sharing something vulnerable and he was still looking at me with the same kindness. Or I was thinking about something he said at 2 in the morning and smiling in the darkness. This was not how it was supposed to happen at 50. Love, according to every narrative I had internalized, was something for young people. It was supposed to be fireworks and intensity and wild abandon. It wasn't supposed to be this quiet. This real. This terrifying. My friends noticed before I was ready to admit what was happening. "You're different," Sarah said over coffee. "You're glowing." "That's absolutely disgusting, actually. I want what you're having." "It's nothing," I lied. "It's obviously something," she shot back. "Tell me." So I did. And the moment I said his name out loud to another person, it became real in a way it hadn't before. It became vulnerable. It became something that could be taken away. "Oh my God," Sarah said, and she grabbed my hands. "You're falling in love." "I'm not," I protested. "It's just friendship. It's companionship. He's kind." But we both knew I was lying. We both knew that something fundamental had shifted inside me. Something that I didn't know how to control or manage or contain. "By December," he said at first. We were on a walk in the park near his house. It was cold. There was frost on the grass. And he turned to me and, without any preamble, without romance, without any of the things that usually precede such a moment, he said it. "I'm in love with you, Evelyn. I have been for months. And I know you're terrified. I know there are 100 reasons you're going to try to talk yourself out of this. But I need you to know that I see you. I see who you are. Not who you think you should be. Who you actually are. And I love her." I stopped walking. And for just a moment, just one moment, I let myself feel it. The joy of being loved like that. The wonder of being truly seen. And then the panic set in. It started as a tightness in my chest. Then it spread to my throat. Then it consumed everything. Because if I let myself love him back, if I let myself believe that this was real and true and possible, then I had to confront something that terrified me more than anything else. I would have to change. I would have to let go of the life I'd built. Not physically, but psychologically. I would have to stop being the woman who was always available. Who didn't need anything. Who was fine on her own. I would have to become a woman who was in relationship. Who had needs. Who was vulnerable. And what if I did that? What if I opened myself up? And he realized I wasn't worth it? What if I let myself love him and he woke up one day and saw through me? Saw that I was just a scared 50-year-old woman trying to convince herself she was still valuable? So I did what I had learned to do so well. I protected myself. I shut the door. I ran away before anyone could leave me first. I broke up with him that day in the park. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just clearly. I said, "This was a mistake. You're a good person, but this isn't right for me. I'm not ready for this. I might never be ready for this. I think we should step back." He tried to argue. He tried to reason with me. He tried to tell me that what we had was real and worth fighting for. But I had become very good at protecting myself. At shutting doors. At running away. So I cut him off completely. I didn't return his calls. I didn't go to the community center. I found reasons to avoid the coffee shop. I unfollowed him on social media. I made myself unavailable. And he, being a good man who respected boundaries, let me go. For 3 weeks, I didn't cry. I didn't feel anything. I just existed in a kind of numb autopilot. I went to work. I came home. I scrolled on my phone. I pretended I was fine. But I wasn't fine. Every evening, I'd go on my walk, and I'd pass the park where he liked to sit, and he wouldn't be there, and I'd feel this strange mixture of relief and devastation. My friends called. They knew something was wrong. What happened with Marcus? Sarah asked directly. Nothing happened, I said. It wasn't going to work out. Did he do something? Did he hurt you? No. He was perfect. That was the problem. Sarah stared at me. That might be the most insane thing I've ever heard you say. He wanted more than I could give him, I explained. He wanted me to be in love with him. And I couldn't do it. So I ended it. And that didn't destroy you? She asked. I'm fine, I lied. But I wasn't fine. By week 4, the numbness started to crack. And through the cracks, grief started to pour in. Real grief. The kind that doesn't make sense. The kind that doesn't have a rational explanation. The kind that just sits in your chest and makes it hard to breathe. I realized what I had done. I had done to Marcus what had been done to me my entire life. I had run away. I had protected myself first. I had chosen the familiar pain of solitude over the uncertain risk of love. I had made the same choice I'd been making for 50 years. And I was exhausted by it. Bone tired. Soul tired. One night, I was sitting on my back porch, my refuge, the place where I did my deepest thinking. And I called my daughter Sophie. It was late. Almost midnight. She was probably asleep, but I needed to talk to someone who would tell me the truth. Mom, she answered, groggy but alert. Are you okay? No, I said. And for the first time in months, I didn't pretend. I just told her the truth. I told her about Marcus. I told her about falling in love. I told her about my terror. I told her about how I had destroyed something beautiful because I was too afraid to believe I deserved it. And Sophie, my wise daughter who was only 26 but seemed to understand things I was still learning at 50, said something that hit me like a punch. She said, Mom, I think you've spent so much time being what other people needed that you don't know how to be what you need. And she was right. She was absolutely right. I had constructed an entire identity around the idea that my needs didn't matter. That my desires were secondary. That my job was to accommodate, to support, to be present for everyone else while remaining somehow absent from my own life. And when Marcus showed up and said, your needs matter. You matter, I didn't know how to receive that. It was too foreign. Too different from the story I'd been telling myself about who I was. What do I do? I asked Sophie. I don't know, Mom, she said. But I know that you're the bravest person I know. You've survived a lot. So maybe now you could survive something good. Maybe you could survive love. I didn't contact Marcus for another 2 weeks. But I did something more important. I started telling the truth. I went through my life and I started to see all the places where I had made myself small. Where I had diminished myself. Where I had chosen what was safe over what was true. I called my mother and I had a conversation I'd been avoiding for 40 years. I told her that it wasn't her fault, the way I had learned to disappear, to accommodate, to prioritize other people's comfort over my own. But I told her that I was done doing that. That I was going to learn a different way. You were always such an easy child, my mother said. You never asked for much. I did ask, I told her. You just didn't hear it. Because I learned not to ask. Because when I did ask, I was told I was selfish. It was hard. It was painful. But it was necessary. I went to my son James and I apologized. I told him that I had made him the center of my life when he was growing up, and I had never allowed him to just be a kid. I had made his achievements my achievements. I had made his happiness my job. I had treated him like he was responsible for my sense of purpose and meaning. He cried. He said he didn't know I felt that way. I don't blame you, I said. That was my responsibility. But I need you to know that it wasn't healthy for either of us. And I'm going to change that. I did the same with Sophie. And with all of them. Michael, Emily, Daniel, Olivia, Joshua. I went to each of them and I had real conversations. Honest conversations. Vulnerable conversations where I acknowledged the ways I had made them responsible for my own emotional well-being. I went to work and I said no to extra projects. I told my boss that I was setting boundaries around my availability. I was no longer going to be the person who came in on weekends or responded to emails at midnight. I was going to do my job well, and then I was going to have a life. She was surprised. But she adjusted. I called my friends and I told them that I could no longer be the reliable one who was always there for them but never asked for support. I told them that I was going to start reciprocating. That I was going to be more honest about what I was struggling with. That I was going to ask for help instead of always being the one who helped. Some friendships deepened because of that honesty. Some friendships ended because they had only existed on one level. And that was okay. That was necessary. And then, finally, after all of that, I had to face the real work. I had to face myself. I went to therapy. Something I'd resisted for years because I felt like I didn't have problems worth discussing. Like my life was stable enough that I shouldn't complain. Like asking for help was weakness. With my therapist, Dr. Chen, I started to excavate. We talked about my childhood. About the messages I'd internalized about what love looked like. About the fear that lived under all my decisions. And we talked about Marcus. You said he was perfect, Dr. Chen observed. But no one is perfect. What did you mean by that? I meant that he treated me like I mattered, I said. And that scared you? Yes. Because if I matter, then I have to do something with that mattering. I have to live like I matter. And I don't know how to do that. I've spent 50 years learning not to matter. So you chose the familiar pain, Dr. Chen said, instead of risking the unfamiliar joy. Exactly. And how's that working for you? I started crying then. Real crying. The kind that comes from deep places inside you. It's not, I whispered. It's not working. Then maybe, Dr. Chen said gently, it's time to try something different. 2 months after I broke up with Marcus, I saw him. It wasn't planned. I was at the grocery store, the same grocery store where I'd had my breakdown in front of the lettuce. And he was there. And we recognized each other. And for a moment, we just stood in the middle of the produce section, looking at each other. He looked sad. There was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Like he had been carrying something heavy. He came toward me. Hi, he said. Hi, I said. How are you? He asked. And the way he asked it, like he genuinely wanted to know, even after I'd hurt him, made my throat tight. I've been doing some work, I said. That's good, he said. Marcus, I owe you an apology, I started, but he held up his hand. You don't owe me anything, he said. I do. I was cruel. Not intentionally, but I was. I shut you out. I made you feel like you had done something wrong, when really I was just scared. He nodded slowly. I was scared too, he admitted. Scared that I had scared you away. Scared that I had pushed too hard. Scared that I would lose you. I lost myself, I said. Before I could lose you. I was protecting myself. And in doing that, I lost the one thing that was making me feel alive. He was quiet for a long moment. I can't do this right now, he said finally. I can't do the reconciliation moment in the middle of the grocery store. It wouldn't be fair to either of us. I know, I said. But I want you to know something, he continued. I meant what I said in the park. I love you. I still do. And if you ever get to a place where you can believe that you're worth loving, you know how to find me. And then he left. And I stood in front of the lettuce again, and I cried. But these were different tears. These were tears of grief for what I had thrown away. But also tears of clarity. Because I finally understood what I had been running from. The next 3 months were the hardest and most important months of my life. Because I couldn't just apologize to Marcus and expect that to be enough. I had to actually change. I had to become someone who was capable of receiving love. Who believed she deserved it. Who could show up fully without constantly waiting for abandonment. It wasn't one moment of transformation. It was thousands of small moments. It was learning to say yes to my own needs without guilt. It was going to dinner alone and not feeling like a failure. It was asking for help when I needed it, instead of always being the helper. It was letting people see me struggle instead of presenting a polished version of okayness. It was difficult. So difficult. There were nights when I wanted to go back to my old patterns. When I wanted to be small and safe and invisible. But I didn't. Instead, I started rebuilding myself. From the ground up. I reconnected with parts of myself that had been dormant for decades. I pulled out my old camera and I started a photography project. I took a writing class. I traveled alone to New Mexico and spent 2 weeks hiking and thinking and breathing in a way that felt like coming back to life. I was becoming Evelyn again. Not the Evelyn of my past, the one who was trying to please everyone. But a new Evelyn. One who knew what she had lost by not knowing herself. One who was determined not to make that mistake again. And through all of this, I found myself thinking about Marcus. Not constantly. But regularly. Wondering how he was. Hoping he was okay. Wishing I could tell him about the things I was discovering about myself. 3 months after the grocery store, I sent him a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A handwritten letter, which felt appropriately vulnerable and formal for what I was trying to say. I wrote to him about the work I'd been doing. I wrote about my therapy. I wrote about the things I was learning about myself. I wrote about how I was finally starting to understand what it meant to love yourself before you could love someone else. I wrote, I don't expect anything from you. I don't expect you to write back. I don't expect you to want to see me. But I wanted you to know that you were right. About me. About what I was afraid of. About what I was capable of. And I'm sorry I was too frightened to acknowledge it at the time. You saw me when I wasn't ready to be seen. And that gift, that act of really witnessing another person, has changed my life. Thank you. I mailed it without letting myself overthink it. And then I waited. For 3 weeks, I didn't hear from him. And that was okay. I had meant what I said. I didn't expect anything. But then one evening, he appeared at my door. I opened it and there he was. And I could see in his face that he had been carrying something too. That my letter had reached him. That he had been waiting too. Hi, he said. Hi, I said. Can I come in? He asked. And this time, I didn't hesitate. I stepped aside and I let him into my life. We sat in my living room and we talked for hours. Real talking. The kind where you say the hard things. Where you acknowledge what went wrong and why. Where you don't hide. He told me about the months without me. How painful it had been, but also how it had made him realize what he wanted. He told me he had started therapy too. That he had been working on his own stuff. That he understood that love wasn't just about grand gestures. It was about showing up. Consistently. Honestly. Even when it was hard. And I told him about my journey. About finally understanding why I had run. About learning to honor my own needs. About learning to believe that I was worth the risk. I'm not perfect, I told him. I'm still figuring all of this out. I'm still going to have moments where I want to run. Where I'm afraid. I know, he said. But you won't run. Not because you can't, but because you'll choose not to. And that's what matters. How do you know that? I asked. Because I know who you are, Evelyn. I've always known. And then, slowly, he reached for my hand. And I let him. I didn't pull away. I didn't protect myself. I just held his hand and let myself feel the truth of what was happening. I let myself believe that at 50, I was being given a second chance. Not just at love, but at life. We've been together for 8 months now. It's not a fairy tale. It's better than a fairy tale, because it's real. We still have arguments. We still misunderstand each other sometimes. There are nights when we're both tired and grumpy and we don't say kind things to each other. There are moments when I still feel the pull toward my old patterns, toward making myself smaller, toward prioritizing his needs over my own. But we work through it. I've learned that love isn't about finding someone perfect and having a perfect relationship. It's about showing up. It's about choosing to understand instead of choosing to win. It's about being willing to be wrong. It's about apologizing when you hurt someone. It's about forgiveness, of others and of yourself. Marcus and I have created a life together that honors both of our needs. He comes to my photography exhibitions. I sit in his office sometimes and listen while he talks about the students he's trying to reach. We cook dinner together, which usually ends in laughter because we're both a bit clumsy in the kitchen. We take walks in the park where this all started, and we hold hands, and we talk about everything and nothing. My children have met him. They like him. More importantly, they see the change in me. They see a mother who is present but not consumed. A mother who has her own life. A mother who loves them deeply but doesn't need them to complete her. Michael told me that he's proud of me. Emily said that watching me reclaim myself gave her permission to do the same. Danielle seems less angry, more at peace. Olivia is living her own life with more confidence. And Joshua is more open, more willing to share what he's thinking and feeling. Sophie said to me recently, "You're happier now than you've ever been." And she's right. But it's not the kind of happiness that comes from finding someone else to complete you. It's the kind of happiness that comes from finally knowing yourself. From finally being yourself. From finally believing that you're enough. But there's something else that I've learned through this entire journey. Something that I need to share with you, because it's the most important part of finding peace after love at 50. I've learned that the greatest gift love gave me wasn't Marcus himself. It was the mirror. It was the reflection that showed me I was worth seeing. It was the proof that I was capable of being loved. It was the evidence that I could feel deeply, want badly, and be brave enough to risk my heart. But the peace came after. The peace came when I realized that even if Marcus had left, even if the romance had ended, the most important love affair would continue. The one with myself. I've learned that you can't build a sustainable relationship on the foundation of someone else completing you. You have to complete yourself first. And then, if love comes, it can be between two whole people. Not two halves pretending to make a whole. I've learned that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that don't have the traditional happy ending. Sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones where you wake up to yourself. Where you remember that you matter. Where you decide that your needs are just as important as everyone else's. My in-laws, Richard's parents Thomas and Margaret, they've watched this entire transformation. Thomas, with his 78 years of wisdom about what family really means, told me that he's proud of how I've handled this. He said that real strength isn't about keeping everything together. It's about being brave enough to let things fall apart so they can be rebuilt differently. Margaret, with her nurturing heart, has been supportive in ways that surprised me. She told me that she wishes someone had given her permission to do what I've done when she was my age. I've learned that peace after love at 50 doesn't mean that the love goes away. It means that you integrate it. You take what the love taught you and you carry it forward. You honor the person who saw you and helped you see yourself. And you build a life that honors that seeing. I've learned that you don't have to choose between love and yourself. You can have both. But you have to choose yourself first. You have to prioritize your own becoming. You have to be willing to say, my needs matter. My growth matters. My life matters. I've learned that the peace comes not from having everything figured out. The peace comes from being at peace with the not knowing. It comes from trusting yourself to make decisions based on what's true for you, not based on what you think you should do. It comes from believing that even if you make mistakes, you're strong enough to survive them and learn from them. I've learned that sometimes the person who loves you the most is the person who's willing to let you go. Marcus was willing to walk away and let me do my work. That took more love than it would have taken to hold on. And I will be grateful for that for the rest of my life. I've learned that at 50, your life is far from over. Your best chapters might still be ahead of you. The years of experience and wisdom and knowing what actually matters can be the most powerful years of your life. If you're willing to claim them. If you're willing to show up for yourself the way you've shown up for everyone else. And here's what I want to tell you, if you're listening to this. If you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or beyond. If you've spent your life making yourself small or invisible. If you've forgotten who you are underneath all the roles you play. You have been given a gift. The gift of perspective. The gift of time. The gift of knowing what matters and what doesn't. The gift of having survived difficult things and knowing that you're stronger than you thought. Don't waste that gift. Don't spend the years you have left still trying to be who everyone else needs you to be. Wake up. Look at your life honestly. Ask yourself the hard questions. And then have the courage to change. Love might come. Love might not come. But you don't need love to make your life real. You need yourself. You need to show up for yourself with the kind of devotion you've been showing everyone else. You need to treat your own needs with the same seriousness you treat everyone else's needs. That's how you find peace after love at 50. Not by having the perfect relationship. But by having the perfect relationship with yourself. My name is Evelyn Parker. I'm 51 years old. I'm in love with a man who sees me. I'm in love with my own life in a way I never was before. I'm still learning. Still growing. Still figuring it out. But I'm doing it on my own terms. The walk I take every evening, I still take it. Sometimes Marcus comes with me. Sometimes I go alone. Both are good. Both are mine. The camera I love, I'm still using it. Capturing moments. Documenting this life that finally feels real. The journal I rediscovered, I'm writing in it again. Not affirmations that feel fake. But real words. Real thoughts. Real truths. And I'm happy. Not in a way that means nothing is ever hard. But in a way that means I'm present for both the difficulty and the joy. I'm alive. And that, I think, is the greatest love story there is. Not the love between me and Marcus, though that's beautiful. But the love I've learned to have for myself. The belief that I matter. The knowledge that I get to write the rest of my story. And I'm going to write it boldly. One honest page at a time. Because our best chapters are not behind us. They're the ones we're brave enough to write right now.